Somewhere, in a private collection right now, sealed behind glass, sits a bottle of perfume that most people will never see, never smell, and never be able to buy, even if they had $1 million sitting in their bank account. Not because it's not for sale, because it doesn't exist anymore. It was made once, sold once, and the world moved on without it. Today, we're counting down the 6 most expensive women's perfumes ever sold. Real auction prices, real bottles, real buyers. And the one at the very top isn't famous. Most perfume lovers have never even heard the name. But once you hear how much it sold for, and why, you'll understand why the world of luxury fragrance isn't really about scent at all. It's about obsession. Perfume is one of the only luxury goods in the world that disappears the moment you use it. A watch stays on your wrist. A handbag sits on a shelf. But perfume evaporates. Literally. So when a bottle survives 50, 80, even 100 years, and someone is still willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars for it, that's not really a purchase. That's an act of preservation. These 6 women fought to own a piece of history that was never meant to last. And the story of how they got it is stranger than you'd expect. We start in Oman, in the early 1980s, with a fragrance house most Americans had never heard of until it started showing up in Beverly Hills perfume counters. Amouage was founded with one goal: to build the most luxurious perfume house on earth, using ingredients so rare that even Chanel and Guerlain couldn't touch them. Frankincense harvested from wild Omani trees, rose absolute from Bulgaria, jasmine picked before sunrise, because the flower loses its oil the second the sun hits it. Amouage Gold for women became the house's flagship, and it wasn't cheap. Even a standard bottle runs close to $1,000 today. But it wasn't the price tag that made it iconic. It was who started wearing it. Word spread through royal circles first. The Sultan of Oman's own family wore the house's fragrances, and then it crossed into Hollywood, where collectors started hunting down early bottles specifically because the original formula, before later reformulations, is considered richer, warmer, and nearly impossible to find today. A perfume that started as a national symbol of Oman ended up as a quiet flex among people who wanted a scent nobody else at the party was wearing. Now, we come to an American name, Elizabeth Arden, the Canadian-born businesswoman who built one of the first true beauty empires in the United States. By the 1930s, Arden wasn't just selling makeup. She was selling an entire lifestyle to American women who wanted to feel like European aristocracy without leaving New York. In 1938, she commissioned Baccarat, the same French crystal house behind some of the most expensive perfume bottles ever made, to create a fan-shaped flacon for her fragrance, Cyclamen. The bottle folded out like a Spanish hand fan, hand-cut crystal, incredibly fragile, and released in extremely limited numbers because the design was too costly to mass-produce. Most were broken, lost, or thrown out decades ago. When a surviving bottle in near-perfect condition surfaced at auction, it sold for $9,600, nearly 1,000 times its original retail price. For collectors, this bottle represents something specific: the exact moment American luxury beauty stopped copying Paris and started competing with it. If you know anything about vintage perfume collecting, you know the name René Lalique. Before he was famous for glasswork, he was a jeweler, and that background shows in every bottle he ever designed. In the 1920s, Lalique created Lalique, meaning the lily, a bottle so intricately engraved with floral relief that it looked more like a sculpture than packaging. Here's what makes this one interesting. The perfume itself was almost secondary. Lalique bottles from this era regularly sell for more than the fragrance houses that hired him to make them. A pristine Lalique, frosted crystal, original stopper intact, can fetch $15,000 to $20,000 at auction today. And buyers aren't drinking in the scent, because most of these bottles are empty or the perfume inside has long since evaporated. They're buying a piece of Art Deco history that happened to be shaped like a perfume bottle. It's the closest thing the fragrance world has to owning a museum piece. This next one has one of the most charming backstories on the list. Earle was a Paris-based beauty house in the 1940s that leaned hard into elegance and femininity, and nowhere is that more obvious than in their Ballerina perfume presentation. The bottle came housed inside a covered plaster ballet shoe stand, gold accented, designed to sit on a vanity like a piece of art, rather than a bottle you'd actually use. The original advertisements called it Ballerina Perfume for Dancing Souls, And it worked exactly as intended. It wasn't marketed as a fragrance. It was marketed as a fantasy. Complete boxed sets with the original ballet shoe stand are almost impossible to find today, which is exactly why one sold for $8,000 at a specialty perfume auction. Buyers weren't just chasing the scent. They were chasing the feeling of what it meant to be a woman in 1940s Paris, bottled and never opened. Named after Hermès's flagship address on Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré in Paris, this fragrance was released in 1995 as a love letter to the house itself. Orange blossom, jasmine, and vanilla, built around the idea of walking into the world's most famous leather goods store. But the version that made history wasn't the standard bottle. It was the limited edition crystal flacon, designed by St. Louis, with only 1,000 bottles ever produced. At roughly $1,500 an ounce, it was already one of the most expensive perfumes you could legally buy new, no auction house required. But that limited production run is exactly what turned it into a collector's obsession. Once those 1,000 bottles were gone, Hermès never made more. Today, sourcing one in mint condition, unopened, with the original packaging, is its own kind of hunt. And serious collectors treat it less like a fragrance and more like owning a numbered piece of Hermès history. And now, the most expensive women's perfume ever sold at auction. And almost nobody knows the name Corday. Corday was a French-American perfume house from the early 1900s, mostly forgotten today, overshadowed by giants like Chanel and Guerlain. But in 1930 they released L'Heure Romantique, the romantic hour, in a Baccarat crystal bottle so beautifully made it could stand next to anything Lalique ever produced. Here's the detail that makes this bottle legendary. When it went to auction, it still had the original case, the original box, and about half of the actual perfume still inside, nearly a century later. Nobody knows for certain whether that was left over from evaporation or because the original owner simply never finished it. Either way, it meant a buyer wasn't just getting a bottle, they were getting a working time capsule, an actual scent from 1930, preserved almost by accident. That combination of rarity, craftsmanship, and surviving liquid pushed the final price to $20,000, making it the most expensive women's perfume ever sold at auction. Notice what all 6 of these have in common. None of them are the perfumes everyone talks about. No Chanel No. 5, no Dior. The perfumes that command the highest prices are almost always the ones the world forgot, the ones that survived by accident, not by fame. That's the real lesson buried in this list. True luxury isn't about being the most popular. It's about being the hardest to replace. Once something is gone, it doesn't matter how quiet the brand was. If this kind of forgotten luxury history is your thing, subscribe, because next time we're going even deeper into the perfumes that time tried to erase.